You've just entered the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. If you've come for actual legal advice, you need to turn right around, honey. You need to get out of here, 'cause you ain't gonna get none of that. They quibble, and they squabble, and they bicker. But if you want to hear meaningless opinions, this is the right place. They got plenty of that. Stuff that makes no sense at all. They go off on tangents. It's crazy talk. If that's your thing, keep listening. They'll keep talking. Welcome back to the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker with your hosts, Greg, Brendan, and Matt. And we have a brand new client today, which is Vacations, Friend or Foe. And one of the main purposes for bringing this up is I just got through hitting a number of national parks, and while having an incredibly good time, I also have a tremendous amount of back pain from all the driving that we were doing. But I went with three of my adult children, and so I'll just list off, and you guys can butt in with whatever you want to say. So first place was Snake River Canyon in Twin Falls, Idaho, which was gorgeous. One of the kids went ziplining there. The second one we went to was Craters of the Moon National Preserve and Monument, I think it's called, outside of Arco, Idaho, and it's this giant lava field that was created by volcanoes thousands of years ago, and it's one of the most incredible landscapes that I've never seen before in my life. It was just very surreal. Then from there we went to the western side of Wyoming, on the western side of the Grand Tetons, I mean, to go see Grand Teton National Park, as well as then go to Yellowstone, and we had a very full 4 days driving around Wyoming, and lots of driving and lots of driving. But Yellowstone is probably the most amazing park I've ever been to in my life. It's like its own continent. It has so much different landscapes inside of it that it's very
Hmm.
hard to
It's
explain.
because the super volcano under it.
I
Yeah,
was gonna
that's a,
say, did you see the super volcano? Did you go do that? That's what
well,
I would want to do.
well, you're basically in the super volcano, the caldera of it, through the entire park for the most part. There's geyser basins, many of those throughout the park. Yellowstone is known for having over half of the known geysers in the world. So there's
Oh.
basically geysers everywhere, and the smell of the devil everywhere, sulfur.
Do
You
they
can
have signs that say, please do not set off the super volcano? Do not taunt it.
don't taunt the super
Egg it
volcano. Like,
on. Don't egg
oh
it
yes,
on,
super
please.
volcano. You think you're so good?
Why don't you show us
I know
something?
better than you. I don't think you
Dormant.
could do any freaking damage
Yeah.
to anybody. But there's these things called paint pools, which are essentially hot springs that are multiple colors, mainly like different shades of blue, but then they get into some oranges on the outside of it, and incredibly clear water where you could see 10 feet deep, as if the rocks that are 10 feet below are at 1 foot deep. It's quite amazing.
Huh.
And not only that, there's like these, I don't know, for lack of a better word, acne. It's like earth acne. In other words, it's these raised dirt areas where they look like they were pimples that were squeezed because there's just an open hole, but there's a I guess a rise from the earth to the hole of about 6 inches, 6 to 12 inches, I suppose you could say, but raised in the similar shape to a pimple. And there were a couple of those that were actually underwater in Yellowstone Lake, and Yellowstone Lake is huge as well. But you walk around the geyser basins on a boardwalk, and there's a lot of signs around essentially saying that if you step off the boardwalk, you have the very real potential of dying because, for one thing, the water in these pools is boiling. Not all of them are geysers, but a lot of them are just really hot. And you can see them bubbling up. I took a bunch of pictures of that. And also, there's a thin crust of earth which you can step through, and in some cases, step into pools of sulfuric acid. So,
Whoa.
exactly.
Wow.
So, there's like a case of a guy who decided to go off one of these boardwalks, and they really couldn't find anything that was left of him other than liquid him because he went into one of the sulfuric acid pools. So yeah, that was enough to keep me from getting near the edge of the boardwalk.
Well,
He just
that's
found his MAGA hat floating on top.
I don't know if death is that political, Greg, but
it certainly is the Darwin effect. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that guy needed to be culled from the herd anyway. So
Well, it's like the people who get too close to the wild animals. So one of the things we saw on the trip in Yellowstone was just herds of bison. In one particular section of the park, they were everywhere. And at one point, I had one walking across the end of the front of my vehicle, and it was that close to me. And another one to the side of us that one of my kids was freaking out about, thought it might want to ram the side of the car and
right.
perhaps tip us over. And it was about the size of our vehicle too. This one bison, it was quite large. Anyway, but we saw a lot of wildlife, which was really cool. We saw the bison. I saw like the nose of a moose that was kind of sticking up at one point, but I didn't get to see all of it because most of the time I was driving, and I didn't get to see much. One of my kids saw an owl 2 different times that nobody else saw. We saw elk at one point, a couple of deer hanging out, a little animal called a pika. We saw that in downtown Jackson, Wyoming, which is essentially a mouse without a tail. I guess that's the best way to describe it, with kind of like larger ears. This cute little thing that lived in the middle of the park in the center of Jackson, Wyoming. In other words,
Is that kind of like a vole?
it could be. I think I saw it. It had its own hole under the sidewalk. So I got a picture of it, and then I wanted to get it to look at me, and it decided instead to go underneath the sidewalk instead of giving me the appropriate picture that I wanted. And I don't know what the hell is in that damn pika's mind. I also got the idea that's probably where Pikachu is named from, was one of these pikas, because it was kind of an odd. I guess it's spelled Pika. The only reason I know it's called a pika is because some woman had done a YouTube video and called it that. So she could have been lying. It might not actually be the name of it at all. It could be some other name completely.
No, I think you're right. And if we want to go old school graphic design, in fact, I made this comment on one of your pictures. We used to have what's called a pica pole. Before there were pixels, one of the units of measurement in graphic design was picas. A font was X amount of picas, and we had these poles that measured picas.
How did you spell pika?
I think it was with a C, not a K.
Okay, like Micah.
Like Micah, but pica.
Right, gotcha. Okay. Well, I don't know. It could be the progenitor to Pikachu, because I could never figure out what kind of rodent Pikachu was supposed to be in the Pokemon cartoons, and that
It's a
made no
pocket
sense to me.
monster.
Right, but Pikachu, where does that particular word come from?
Oh, I don't know.
It's probably Japanese for electric mouse or something stupid.
Electric
That's
Mouse
a great
is the
hippie
name.
band.
That was Greg's vibrator's name. Anyway.
Oh, you. So I was telling a friend about your trip,
Oh,
and
you.
they said that they heard a story just recently. Some woman in Yellowstone got out of her car to like feed a bison or something. Get all close, and like a couple of bison mauled her, ripped her dress off. Luckily, they didn't kill her.
Well, my wife was telling me about that when I got home, that essentially it threw her up and her pants came off.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. But, I'd seen a video of something like that before I went, and I went, okay, that's a really good reason to not get close to a bison. Because first of all, they're in rutting season right now, too. So the males are agitated to begin with. And then there was a woman who decided to try and grab the horns of a bison to get a better selfie or something. So we wanted to move the bison's head. And the bison didn't. This isn't something that recently happened, but it's something that happened in the past. And the bison didn't appreciate that, and essentially flung her up in the air like a rag doll.
Yeah, when I lived in Alaska, we would have moose come into the city quite frequently. The snow would get too heavy in the outskirts of town where they lived, and so they would come into town looking for food. And so you'd have, literally like you'd be driving to work on what would amount to kind of a main street in Anchorage, and there'd be some moose just kind of standing in the middle of the road. And they're kind of nearsighted, so their vision isn't really good, and they're kind of ornery and they're hungry. And so that was a real problem when I lived there. Was wintertime moose would come into town.
And moose are big, dangerous animals. I wouldn't want to be near one of those suckers. I mean, I've seen video where they like nearly knocked over a car also.
Oh yeah, no, there was a time when I was younger, I was like, I would go out, jogging, in all weather, and it was like it was probably like October, November, so there was snow on the ground, and I'm coming up this trail, and there was a baby moose which is always a bad sign. And I stopped, and I'm like, oh no.
Where's the mama?
Oh no. And about that time, I kind of, like you said, I saw that nose come out of the brush on the other side of the trail. I'm like, I'm not sure what to do in this situation. And then she came out and was kind of looking at me, or at least looking in my direction. And I just sort of like wandered off, like I was confused and lost. And
you didn't grab the horn so you could get a better selfie.
No,
you didn't think of that.
No, I didn't approach the baby moose. I didn't try to maul it or fuck it or anything. I just
That's good to hear. Glad you restrained yourself from those urges.
But it was
do unnatural things with a baby moose. You could have ridden it like a cowboy. You'd be a moose boy.
Yeah, I could have. It was the baby was probably big enough to ride. It probably could have supported me. I didn't weigh as much then as I do now.
Yeah, but, the mama moose probably would have been like, "Oh, that's cute."
Yeah, the moose would have been so happy.
He's riding my baby.
Yeah,
they're playing together. He's on a playmate.
So Yellowstone, getting back to where else I went with, so Yellowstone was awesome in terms of all the wildlife. And the final place we hit, which we had the most limited amount of time to see, but we wanted to spend the most time at, was the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it is.
No, I just know about the real Grand Canyon.
Right, there's real Grand Canyon, but there's one called the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone, which you kind of come across, not by accident, but when you get there, you don't see it at first until you go look over a lip, and then suddenly these multicolored walls appear, and way down below is this Emerald Falls, which is down at the bottom of the canyon, which we saw there was like two falls, but we only saw the one, which is the lower falls. And it was like this green water, like emerald green water going over the falls. It was amazing. And the walls of the canyon were various different shades of yellow or gold, depending upon your point of view.
Do you think they dye it like beer on St. Paddy's Day? There's park rangers who just pour green dye to make it a better thing.
Not the walls.
The water for the tourists.
Yeah, well, I think what they do in the case of the water is they grab hundreds of leprechauns and squeeze them into the water.
That's more likely.
That's
more likely.
Time out. Let's not start getting racist about leprechauns.
It's not racist.
As the Haggerty in the group, I much like the Washington football team, I really think that Notre Dame should just retire the angry little drunk Irish.
Yeah, fighting Irish, drunken fighting Irish, they might as well be called.
Well, right now they're
surly Irish.
They're COVID Irishmen is what they are, since like 170 students just came down with it at Notre Dame.
God will protect them. My question is, isn't that a little overreaching on behalf of Yellowstone? Like, you got all the Yellowstone stuff. Do you really need to steal the Grand Canyon?
Yeah. Do they have a leaning tower of Yellowstone too?
Leaning tower. Well,
they have Eiffel Tower.
They have a mud volcano.
Well,
does it really spew mud, or is it?
It was basically boiling mud, and I tell you, of all the places, all the sulfur places that we went, that stunk the worst of all the places was the mud volcano.
That makes sense.
It was like, it's hard to describe it other than boiling, spoiled mud smell is what.
I didn't know mud could spoil. Did it smell like rotten eggs?
No, that's sulfur. It was worse than that.
Oh, this was worse than
I could handle the sulfur smell in the different places we went to, because there were geysers. Like, there's steam throughout the park, or the large portion of the park.
Yeah.
You drive.
They should call it the diarrhea volcano.
So what did this volcano mud smell like? So it wasn't sulfur.
Well, like I said, it was like a spoiled mud smell, if you could imagine what mud would smell like if it's.
I don't know what spoiled
if mud went bad.
If it went bad.
If you kept the mud out on your I can't even think of a word, on your counter too long. This is what happens. You have too many mini strokes in your life. You can't come up with words for it.
It would become dirt. That's all it would become. Dry dirt. That's all mud was.
Well, if you kept watering it anyway.
So is it that earthy, muddy smell with kind of a
sour smell,
like sour, sweet sort of smell to it?
I wouldn't give it a sweet smell. I think it was more like if you had boiling shit. Then maybe that's a better.
Okay.
They should call it diarrhea volcano.
It could have been. It kind of looked like it. I didn't get really any good photos because I wanted to get out of there really. As soon as I got out of my car and I went to take a photo, I went, "Oh, I got to get out of here. This is horrible." So, and it was like the final part of our day too. It's like we just seen the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, which was amazing, and but we could only check it out for like 5 minutes because we needed to get back to the other side of the Tetons before it got dark because the speed limits go down when it gets dark because of Animal Crossing, and
Yeah.
because there's a lot of moose and elk and bison that could be on the roads. You know, as I witnessed, they could definitely be on the roads.
They should at least call it the not so Grand Canyon, or just to
Well,
differentiate it,
it's Grand
not to
Canyon
steal the thunder.
of the Yellowstone, so
Yeah.
that's how they differentiate it.
Okay.
Because
I,
Yellowstone
I still
actually
don't
had
like
a
it.
well, Yellowstone had a number of canyons.
Hmm.
So there was Lewis Canyon, which was really great to look at as well, and there was I think another one that I can't remember. And so that's why it's Grand Canyon of Yellowstone because it's the biggest of the canyons in Yellowstone. If
As
that
a
helps you.
Yes.
fake lawyer, I'm seriously considering calling Arizona and representing them in a trademark lawsuit against Yellowstone for calling it the Grand Canyon.
Do you want to like
It's a
get
good
all of
idea.
the horns away from the bison in as part of the settlement?
I don't know. Maybe as part of the settlement, we just cement up the shit volcano that you were talking about as a public service,
I mean, like
just
perhaps.
that would.
the drop mud volcano. Is that
Yeah,
a better
yeah. We
perhaps term?
just cover it in cement and be done with it. Maybe that would spur the damn super volcano, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll have to see what Arizona wants in terms of retribution.
I don't think
Yeah,
they'll
talk
give
to a fake geologist about it.
get a
Fake
fake
lawyer.
archaeologist involved as well. So
Oh,
that was the second, or I guess the second and third. So basically, it was Snake River Canyon, Craters of the Moon. Then we went to see the Grand Teton National Park. And if you've never seen the Grand Tetons, see them once in your life because the pictures don't do them any justice. They're just
what is a Teton?
it's the name of one of the mountains is the Grand Teton, and so it's part of.
But that would imply that there's a mini Teton or a lower Teton or a.
Yeah, it does imply that it's a French term, and I looked it up once, and I can't remember what it means. So, I mean, if it's really
No, it's not. I'm just saying.
Teton, does
I just always heard the Grand Tetons, and I thought, so are there's some place where there's minor Tetons or lesser Tetons or mini
alleged? I don't know
Tetons,
if I believe this definition. Definition. It's
tiny
uh,
Tetons.
French Canadian trappers gave the mountain range the body name of Grand Tetons, meaning big breasts in French.
See, I was
Ah,
giggling when you
it
first
was a
mentioned
titty.
it,
I
and you
had a
said I was
feeling.
being immature.
But
I
I
thought
was.
I
but
thought there might be a titty reference in it.
according to this other definition, it is another term for Lakota, which makes more sense to me.
I'm going with
Yes.
titties.
Yeah.
Which is a term for the Sioux.
Are they round mountains that look kind of like boobies?
Their origin is dwellers on the prairie, but they're mountains. So yeah, I know that's what Dakota means.
And the Lakota had very big breasts. They're women.
Yes,
They were known
did.
for their ample bosoms.
And the men as well. As a matter of fact, they wore them on their head like lamps. Like most people wear lamps on their heads.
When they're drunk at a party, sure.
So anyway, the Tetons are these amazing mountains that you can imagine as either breasts or representative of the Sioux. That's your choice. Anyway, so we did that one day, and then the next day was Yellowstone, which needs like 3 or 4 days at least if you're going to really do justice to Yellowstone and see everything that's there. Because we kind of saw a little bit of Old Faithful and the lodge that's next to it, which is supposed to be kind of amazing too, but we didn't really have the time to go into it. And the next day we decided we wanted to look for wildlife, so we spent that day. Well, we hit something called Mammoth Hot Springs, which are gigantic hot springs and incredible rock formations to see on the way there.
No.
Then we went to this valley to go try and find wildlife, and that's where we found all the bison. But we were actually looking for wolves because there's supposed to be like 10 wolf packs in Yellowstone, which were introduced, I think, back mid 90s. And they've been actually really responsible for building the bison population because the elks were eating all of the bison's food. And when the wolves came in, they started eating the elk, and the bisons were now able to get more food. And so the bison population has grown, and the wolf population has grown. So we went looking for wolves, didn't find them. We found a ton of bison. And I know one of my kids, I think I said earlier, saw an owl or two on the side of the road nobody else saw. Anyway,
It's sad that all these decades they could have let elk hunters go through the parks shooting elk, having a good time, and that would have brought back the buffalo herds. They didn't
well,
even think of that.
well, I think they just don't want hunters on national land.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was kidding.
It's national park land there, Greg.
Well, going back to my experience in Alaska, they'd fly helicopters and shoot wolves out of helicopters. So it was like Apocalypse Now up there relative to wilderness and wildlife.
That's good sport.
Wait, so there's like one like wolf hanging out in the woods that had shaved itself and was waiting for the Charlie Sheen of wolves
Yeah,
to
a
come
rogue
and
wolf.
assassinate it. Yeah, the Marlon Brando wolf out in the woods.
Fairbanks.
Horror.
I'm still in Fairbanks.
So anyway, so the final stop we made was Glacier National Park in Montana. So that was like an 8-hour drive from Yellowstone, and we spent I think like 2.5 days there. And there's something called the Going to the Sun Road, and the apex of that was beautiful. You're like surrounded by mountains, you're in a place called Logan Pass. And the kids decided to go on a hike there, and I'm not a hiker, so I just hung out waiting for them. I was just sitting on a rock, and while I'm sitting on a rock about 20 yards away, I noticed some rustling in the trees that are nearby. And I'm like, oh, no, is that a deer? And then out pops a bighorn sheep. And,
I saw that picture. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it was really, really close by, too. And I'm like, all right, I think I'm safe from that guy. I don't think he'll come after me. And then as he's going across the street, another one pops up and starts jumping across the barrier that was there on the road. And then I realized that the tourists would finally start seeing me taking pictures, because I was the first one to get a glimpse of them, which rarely happens for me. I never see the wild animals first. And then all these other people were in, because it was a big parking lot. It's a major visitor center there. All these people come out with their photographs, with their cameras, not their photographs, and start taking pictures.
Here, look at these pictures I took.
Hey, I haven't taken these pictures yet, but take a look at them. Right now, there's nothing on these invisible photographs. So
how big? I mean, that thing looked big. I've never seen a whatever that is.
Well, have you seen a sheep?
Well, yeah, of course.
All right, so it's basically about the size of a sheep.
Oh,
so
really?
The day
it
before,
so much bigger.
Well,
it looked like it was about 4 foot at the shoulder.
Well, they stand higher, I think. Sheep are all hunkered down.
Well, they were also at a little bit of a higher incline from how.
Okay, so it was no bigger than your average domesticated sheep.
Yeah, but the horns, I think, add a couple of inches above their head. And I think they're more related to a goat than a sheep, because I got a picture. I was looking at their faces, and their face looks a little closer to the mountain goat I had seen the day before.
Yeah, they do look like goats more. You're right.
Yeah, but apparently they're sheep. But those horns look pretty massive, and there are people getting kind of close to them to take pictures, and like, you guys need to get back away.
Is it true that goats can eat tin cans? Is that an old wives' tale?
I think they do if they have a little bit of seasoning.
If it's cooked well,
I'm just gonna say goats are fucking crazy.
You had long conversations with goats to make that assumption.
No, but
that damn goat, he thinks that you shouldn't wear masks either.
He thinks that the Illuminati killed JFK. They're nuts.
Have either one of you ever looked directly into the eyes of a goat?
No,
but
I'm afraid they'd hypnotize me.
I think I've eaten some goat before.
Well, you may have, but I'm telling you, I have stared down a goat like right in the eyes. And there's, how like if you're looking at somebody and you get, that kind of window of your soul thing, and you kind of get a bead on the person if you really look into their eyes. If I promise you, next time you have an opportunity, look directly into the eyes of a goat, and you'll know what I'm talking about. They're crazy. Goats go to hell, sheep go to heaven.
I think
I've sung that song at karaoke before, but at the same time, there is a movie about people like you, which is Men Who Stare at Goats, and I think you should probably watch it. It'll be.
I have seen both the movie and the original BBC documentary. The BBC documentary is fantastic. The movie was a bit of a joke, but it was a movie.
Right, it was.
I think Friedrich Nietzsche said, "Be careful when you stare into the eyes of the goats, because they stare back."
Fried Rick?
The goat will stare back.
You called him Fried Rick? It was like Rick got
That's
fried.
What his buddies called him. His close friends called him, "Hey, Fried Ricky." Fried Rick.
That was
Friedrich.
but
I don't know how to say it.
Friedrich Nietzsche is who you're talking about?
No, this is his cousin, Friedrich. Who wasn't as bright.
The
He was a
hillbilly.
farmer. Yeah, he was a farmer, lived with goats.
Well, if he was a farmer, he knew more about goats than Nietzsche. Nietzsche was whatever.
He had a lot of
Nietzsche had the
aphorisms
whole
about,
theory about super goats.
Yes,
There are
man,
no
goat or
super
super
goats.
goat. That was his famous book.
Which will you be?
I want to point out that super goats or artificially intelligent goats is on my apocalypse bingo card. So if that comes
Is that
up,
scarier than zombies for you? Would you be more
I think
scared in
so.
that world?
I don't know why.
Instead of Planet
I
of the
think
Apes,
I'm
it'd be Planet of the Goats.
I'm irrationally afraid of goats.
Because you could have a tin fence and they could eat right through it like a tin can.
There's nothing that'll stop a goat.
Yeah.
My
Like
wife,
shotgun?
literally, my wife was accosted by a goat as a 5-year-old child. The goat ended up eating her coat. She had to be saved by a bus driver. Goats are awful fucking creatures.
Apparently, bus drivers are really good at saving people from things because your wife was saved by a bus driver, and at my school in high school, there was a cobra that went across a field, a soccer field, and drove across the cobra with a bus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
we've learned that buses are better than steamrollers at cobra killing.
It's still up for debate.
In our
actually.
earlier in our early episodes before you came on and joined the partnership of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker.
The scientific community is still wondering about that. It's not totally proven.
If the cobra's not moving fast enough, the steamroller will be effective. But cobras move faster than steamrollers.
Yes.
So that's why
You
a
gotta
bus
aim with the tires.
would be more effective at cobra killing than a steamroller because the cobra can get away from a steamroller. It can't really get away from
I will
a bus
concede
as easily.
just to alleviate the boredom of our listeners and move on the topic.
I think they're all
Since we
sitting and
talked about
waiting
this before.
I know, but
We
they're all
talked about this.
they enjoy this debate, I think. Enjoy
It's an age-old question.
What's better at killing cobras? Buses? Steamrollers?
Boxers or briefs?
Pitchforks?
Steamrollers or buses?
I've had to deal with plenty of snakes in Florida, and I got to tell you, one of the best snake repellents is a goddamn good shovel.
Oh, I thought it was just don't
Yeah.
vote them into office.
Ooh.
Ah,
What about a lawnmower, though? That would be good. Snakes running in your lawn. Just take the lawnmower.
I
Run
took
right
out. We have these types of snakes down here called black racers, and they're really big snakes. They're huge.
black
And,
racers.
Yeah, they usually live under your house. They're a constrictor, and they're good because they eat rats, and we
Okay.
have rats down
Like
here.
a garter snake, kind of.
Kind of like a garter snake, but like
Bigger.
4 feet long.
Okay.
I took out a racer, a black racer with my lawnmower, I don't know, it was probably like 15 years ago. I felt so bad.
Not as bad as the snake did.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
obviously not as bad. I hit that thing, and, you had the little side thing where the grass comes out. Parts
Yeah.
of snake are flying out of that thing, and I'm like,
Get snake choke.
I thought maybe it was a bike tire or something at first. Like, that was the original, thought. And then I'm like, I don't have bike tires in my yard. What the hell? And then I stopped, and I looked, and I'm like, oh, man.
Sorry.
I went over a frog once with the lawnmower, and I still to this day remember its red guts on the beautiful green lawn. It was kind of beautiful, actually, but horrifying. And I was such a Ranger Rick kid, nature-loving kid, that I couldn't finish the lawn. And I went home. I
That's
left the
Ranger
lawnmower.
Friedrich.
Fried Rick.
So were you mowing someone else's lawn?
Yeah, just right next door. I once a week I'd mow for a little money. And she had to come over and be like, Greg, what happened? What's going on? And I was shaking. I was actually traumatized. I was like, I killed a frog.
How old were you?
God, it's embarrassing. I was already 13. It wasn't like I was a little
Oh,
kid.
that's not embarrassing. If you had said you were 22, that would have been embarrassing.
Yeah.
13.
Just
It was
last
last
week,
week.
actually.
Yeah, last week actually. Yeah.
He was out there mowing
I
frogs.
killed a frog.
I remember actually enjoying doing the dissection of frogs in, I think it was junior high.
I never had to do that in my school. They never made us do that shit.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
We definitely did it. Because they're very formaldehyded, so there's no wiggling around or anything else that would.
Yeah, they're already dead, so it's not
Yeah,
like you're killing the
very
frog.
dead. It was just cutting it open. It was kind of like the live version of playing the game Operation. You're taking out the parts of the frog, and then we had to label the little frog heart. And I remember peeling the skin off the frog and going, "Oh, this is kind of fascinating."
And that's why you're a serial killer now.
I
In your spare time.
I have not killed any cereal, although I have eaten plenty. So I will not accept that assessment of me, Greg.
We dissected a frog, and I feel like I did some sort of like sheep heart
A
or
sheep
something,
heart.
or a cow heart. We did some kind of mammal heart,
Okay.
sort of similar to the frog. It was so formaldehyde it was basically just jerky at this point.
So
And
when you were done, you just started gnawing on the heart.
no, I think I threw it at somebody. I think I threw chunks of the heart at somebody because I was really high on
Something.
weed. Yeah.
Formaldehyde.
You know, a
Maybe.
few weeks ago, I'm going to change the subject back to our client, which is vacations friend or foe, and you had mentioned a time you were flown out like 200 miles into the Alaskan wilderness and just dropped off.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you could relate that. Like, first of all, why would you have that done? Why would you want to be flown out 200 miles away from civilization and expect to survive, for one thing?
Yeah, that's not really a vacation. That's like a
More of a foe than a friend.
yeah.
Yeah. You know, at the time I was going through a lot.
Yeah.
And
was this when you were trying to get away from the bad people?
Yeah, I was trying to get away from the bad people.
Is this a story you want to relate to Greg, or should we not do this publicly?
Oh, it's fine. I was trying to get.
Then he'll love this story. Tell him the full thing then.
I don't want to hear about the bad people, so I can avoid them.
Yeah. Well, you know what it was, you know, I grew up in Bremerton, which is, you know, outside of Seattle for, well, most of the people who are in the Northwest know what I'm talking about. And, you know, I just got involved in the same kind of, you know, kids and drugs and whatever. And I thought, I need to just change the channel and go do something else. So I went to Alaska. I get to Alaska, and everything was pretty cool for about a month or two. And then all of a sudden I found I was surrounded by essentially the same people. They just had different faces, but I could almost sort of pick them out. Like, oh, that's the Alaska version of that kid I knew back then. And that's the Alaska version of that whore I knew back then. And, you know, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And then I kind of reached a point where I'm like, okay, obviously it's not these people, it's me, because I just keep, you know, attracting these people. So I decided,
Greg,
I don't know what sort of lesson he's trying to give you, Greg, out of my story, but whatever. So
no, I think the lesson is bad people are everywhere,
and that you've attracted Greg to yourself now.
So anyway, so I decided that I needed to just kind of like some sort of zen, get away from it all. Just so the most crazy thing I could think of was to, because I knew a bunch of bush pilots, was to hire one of them to fly me the fuck somewhere and just drop me off and leave me for, you know, 2 weeks.
So it's like your very own Outward Bound type thing.
Yeah.
I think maybe a little worse than Outward Bound, though. There's no one out there to save him.
No, there wasn't. And so I saved, I think I had to pay the guy like $200 to fly me out there. And then I obsessed about all the different stuff I would pack, and I had all this stuff and the food and the thing and the tent. And
did you have a gun?
No, well, I'm getting to that. It was September, so it wasn't super cold, but it wasn't like summer. It was, you know, it was cold. So I had all that gear. We're flying out. This comes to the gun point. We're flying out. We're getting close. This is about a 2-hour flight. And in this little tiny, you know, Cessna. And the guy looks at me and he goes, "Kid, you got a gun?" I'm literally like, I think I was 19 at the time. I might have been 20. Don't remember. I think I was 20. And he says, "You got a gun?" And I said, "Yeah." And I pulled out this little 38, like snub nose, you know, like gangster thing.
Isn't that a Saturday Night Special?
Saturday Night Special. It's exactly what it was. And he said, "What, are you going to rob a liquor store? There aren't any liquor stores out here, kid."
You're going to mug a bear?
Yeah. Exactly.
Give me your honey.
Yeah.
It's a stick up.
It's a stick up. Yeah. So,
nah.
No, you beavers ain't going to build that dam here. I'll tell you right now.
I tell you right now, nothing doing.
You got to pay protection money for all the dams you make.
Damn beavers.
So he goes, "You can take the shotgun in the back. You just need to bring it back with you. You might as well just leave that with me as collateral." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So then he drops me off, and this is the killer part. I'm unloading the stuff. He's helping me unload, and he goes, "Look, kid, here's the deal. In exactly 2 weeks at this time, this exact moment, I will be back here. I will land, and I will sit here for exactly 1 hour.
1 hour.
If you are not here in that hour, I will fly away and leave you." So good luck. And then he flew away.
So what did you do then for 2 weeks? How did you survive?
You know, I had a certain amount of supplies in terms of food.
Uh-huh.
I did a lot of walking around. And
Did
there
you
was one.
stay near the airstrip?
Oh, hell yeah. That was the first thing I did was I'm like, I'm not going to go marching off into the, tall forest. I'm going to stay within like eyesight of this place. So I did a lot of hiking and walking around and thinking. There was one point where it was somewhat near the coast. It was about probably a 3-4 mile hike from where I camped and where the airstrip was to the coast where the beach was. And I went out there.
Just like the North Pacific, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And so I get out to and there's a cliff and then there's this beach. And so I'm on this cliff and I'm looking down and there's 3 polar bears.
Polar bears.
Yeah. And
I didn't know they came down that far south.
oh yeah.
Oh wow.
In
Alaska?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're all over Alaska, aren't they?
Well, you got to get out kind of to the ocean and you definitely have to be north of the city up, near Barrow and north of Anchorage. But anyway, I don't know if the pilot well had beached itself or if they had actually taken this pilot well out, but they were just feasting on this whale on the beach, and that scared the shit.
Did you beat a hasty retreat at that point?
Oh, I fucking ran like a little girl back to my tent and spent the night awake in the tent with my gun, with the pilot's gun, like just listening for, there'd be like a hoot owl or something, there'd be a crack of something. I'd be like, that was an exciting night.
And so for how many days did you have that paranoia after seeing the polar bears?
It was probably that night and the next night, and then I was sort of like, the polar bears don't give a shit about me.
Did you have to hunt, or you had enough food, like granola bars that should last you 2 weeks, or did you have to actually be like, I gotta get some food, shoot a bird or something?
I had enough food. I had done a lot of camping, so I knew how to like pack light. I didn't have to do any hunting or
So
fishing.
you weren't eating any raw varmints then?
No, I didn't do. I wasn't out there with. What was the movie about the guy that ran off into the Alaskan wilderness?
Oh yeah, the book.
Died because he ate bad fucking potatoes or some shit. I forget. No, I didn't have to do any of that. I packed pretty well. I was hungry. I wasn't satisfied. I was hungry a lot of the time. And when I got back to civilization, I ate the shit out of some steak and ribs and stuff like that. But
How was it mentally? Like, was it just weird not having like TV for 2 weeks or just no stimulus? Did you have a book at least to read or something?
I had a couple of books, and yeah, it was definitely weird. But that was kind of what I was going for. I was kind of going for that, just like
get away from civilization vibe and
like a Buddhist monk.
Right. Well, and I had the other thing that I did that I think helped is I had like a journal, and so I would write in it every day. That somehow helped. Just the isolation of it all.
Did you get any?
Do you still have that journal?
Do you have any great insights into humanity whenever you're writing in the journal? Any profound moments that happened while you're out there?
Were you like Friedrich Nietzsche?
Friedrich.
Friedrich.
Yeah, I was Friedrich. Oh God, big thoughts? No, not really.
So you were no good for humanity then, is what you're saying?
Well, no, I wasn't any good for humanity. I think more than anything, I was good for myself. I think I really kind of was introspective of how I got to where I was at that point in my life and why. And
did you change things after that? When you got back, were you like, yeah, I learned a lot. I'm going to do things differently.
Yeah, he joined a monastery and
practically
started his own internet startup company.
That sounds great, though. That's amazing. Like, people go through years of therapy to get insights like that, but you just basically risked your life for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I came back and I was definitely a different person when I came back.
How were you able to tell that it was 2 weeks later? Did you have like a watch or a calendar or something that you were marking off?
I counted the sunrises and sunsets in the journal.
Okay, oh, that's good. I was curious, like, were you ever nervous that you might miss the plane? Like,
I was for fucking absolutely. Anytime I left the tent and went anywhere, I was like obsessively like, no, what did I write in it? No, it's been exact. And what time? And I did have a watch, so I knew what time it was. I was more concerned about the passing of days because I think probably a lot of people out there who are, living sheltered in their house or whatever. If you don't have some sort of pattern in your day to day, sometimes you go, is it Saturday? Is it Friday? I don't even know what day it is. So it was a little bit like that. I mean, I knew it was, day, and I knew it was night, but one day to the next, it really blended.
Because you have to get it within that hour too, so it's not only keeping track of the days, but when he actually left initially, so you'd have to be.
Yeah, when I knew it was close to his arrival, I didn't leave camp for more than like 20 minutes.
It's like utter paranoia. I'm not going anywhere. I can't miss this show. The show of him arriving in the plane, of course.
Next time you
And
do that, though.
I'll never forget hearing the engine, like, and I was like, there was such an ecstasy, such a joy, such a like relief to hear this stupid engine. I don't think I've experienced that at any other point in my life as much as I was just like,
the catharsis of it all.
Yeah, thank God. And then I saw it, and then he landed. I'd never been happier to see anyone in my life. He comes out
and lick his face and
practically. I came running up and I was hugging him, and he's like, "Kid, I get it. Go get your shit and get in the plane." And I'm like, "Oh my God!" I was crying. I was a mess.
On the plane ride back, were you just jabbering because you hadn't talked to someone in 2 weeks? You're just like, I want to talk.
Oh no, I talked. I told him all about the polar bears. Yeah, he was a decent guy. I'd known this guy prior to this. It wasn't just like I knew him before because he used to come into the store I worked at and buy supplies, which meant mostly he bought 6-packs of beer that he would then fly into the native communities. And he could make a fortune selling one beer at a time. So he'd buy a 6-pack for like whatever it was at the time, $4 or $5. He'd make $20, $30 per 6-pack. And that was what he did on the off season, was sold liquor to Eskimos.
So
wow.
He was no better than the early settlers in the United States.
He was a bootlegger.
He's like tossing smallpox blankets to him as well.
Yeah. Totally.
Greg was kind of like that, filled with joy when he found out that I was back from vacation.
I was. I have no life without Matt. He's the sun to my solar system.
Right. Anyway, so I would say that would be a vacation that was more foe than friend, especially because
I don't know about that. He learned a lot.
He did learn a lot, but there was also that stress of being able to get back to civilization.
Yeah, probably
if he missed his ride,
Yeah, if you think about a vacation as relaxing, that wasn't relaxing, I imagine.
No, it was definitely. I would agree. It was a faux. It was a choice that I made. I made that faux choice, but it was definitely an anxiety.
I think it was a friend life experience. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it was anxiety ridden. I was scared. I went through all kinds of emotions during it. I wouldn't consider that a vacation.
So, Greg, have you got any similar stories of
no?
vacations that you've taken?
I've never even shit in the woods in my life. I've never had a shit.
Squat and shit.
I hate nature. I don't understand hiking and camping.
Well, vacations don't all have to be nature. It's just that.
No, that's true. But I'm like a hobbit. I don't really care about seeing other places. I just like being content in my little hobbit hole with my comic collection.
So for you, what would you consider to be a vacation then?
The only vacation I ever really that blew my mind was when I went to Italy. One of the few times I've left the country, and I visited all my relatives for like 3 weeks, up and down the boot. I had like tons of relatives in Italy, and the main reason I loved it because they all cooked for me, and everyone was a world-class chef. I gained 20 pounds in 3 weeks in Italy. Literally. I'm not kidding. I weighed myself. I was like, and I don't regret one of those pounds. I would have gained more if I could have stuffed more food down my gullet. But it was also just crazy just being in another country for the first time in my life. Like just the little differences. I don't want to sound like the guy in Pulp Fiction, but it was just like, it stuck in my brain. I have a horrible memory, but that Italy trip every day something will remind me of Italy. Like, oh, I don't know, pop in my head. Like,
So that was
it was
more
just,
friend than foe for you.
oh, definitely, yeah.
It was a good friend.
A very rewarding vacation. You know, I've traveled in America every year. My family goes to this little island off Rhode Island called Block Island. It's all nice. It's relaxing. It's nice, but I don't have these like. It didn't like doesn't change the way I look at things. Like going to Italy actually like almost made me think like I do want to travel more. I want to go to Japan now and just see like I never wanted to travel to Italy. I just did because my dad had cancer, wasn't going to be around for much longer. It was like, this is your last chance. Go with your dad to Italy. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to do it. But it was really amazing. And I want to go to another country again. I want to go to Spain and Japan. And
So what's
but I
stopping you?
can't.
Why? Why can't you?
You know the answer, Matt. We
'Cause-
talked about this. I can't afford it.
'cause you can't. You know, it's not as expensive as you might think to travel to another country.
Even to take off that much a week of work is expensive for me, let alone the cost of the airline ticket and stuff.
Sometimes it's worth like torturing yourself a little bit to be able to
I know.
develop this kind of memories.
Yeah. But you know what the thing is? I have such a bad memory too. It's also kind of weird because I'll forget it all anyway. So what's the big, a year later, it'll be like, oh, well.
It's the overall feeling you get from it. You know, I've done
That's
a lot
true.
of traveling in my life, and I can't remember. I think 90% of the places what I've done and 90% of the places I've gone to.
Yeah, you've been
But
a lot.
you get this overall sensation of the areas that I've found. In other words, you go, oh, I have a fond memory of being there. Something about it was very good for me. Or you go
Yeah.
to some other location where you're like, oh, I don't want to ever be anywhere near that place again. You know, it's kind of like within Yellowstone. It's like I don't really need to go see the mud volcano again. I won't probably remember it. I'll just remember there's odors that will trigger me going, ugh, I don't need to see that. However, you know, the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone was great, and going and seeing the bison was great as well. We took this one long dirt road that was only 6 miles long, but it took us like an hour to get through it. And that was like a fun little trip. Oh, I forgot to mention that I did get to commit an act of aggression against a foreign power on this trip. Coming out of Glacier
Just
National
great.
Park. Coming out of Glacier National Park on the western side of it, there is this road which parallels the park, and it goes straight to Canada. And I mean, there's like not really any detours you could take. It just takes you there, and it's 35 miles away, and 30 miles of that was unpaved roads. And so I'm like, well, let's go to Canada, kids. And so we just kept driving, and eventually we got to a sign which said, you're not allowed to enter into Canada. And there was essentially one of those gates that you would see like across a driveway, and that was locked. But you could actually walk around the gate if you wanted to. There's plenty of space. You just can't drive through it. And there was like a white pylon off to the side, which signified it was the Canadian border. And then there was like a building, maybe about 100 yards away on the Canadian side, and there's a similar looking building on the American side which had two border patrol cars, or I guess SUVs, that were sitting there. And so as opposed to taking the chance of getting arrested by actually walking across the border, I instead decided to throw a rock across the border and start a war with Canada. But
An international incident.
It didn't actually happen, though. I tried, but I guess I should have probably broken something if I really wanted to do that. But, I thought the kids should at least have a chance to experience being near a foreign country at least once in their lives. It's kind of like a flavored seltzer water that doesn't have like any sugar in it. It's like you get the whiff of Canada. Like if you had, say, a tangerine flavored La Croix, it's like they wave a tangerine near it to get flavor into it. That's similar to being near Canada.
Did you gather the kids around and look over the border and be like, kids, maybe one day you can live in this great land of opportunity, Canada, where the streets are paved with sanity,
healthcare,
with non-ignorance and common sense.
No, they got plenty of that there too.
Everyone's not crazy.
No, they
do.
Everybody's,
but
crazy.
It's not the majority of the people are nuts.
I disagree. I think the majority of people are nuts wherever you go.
I think America right now has got a corner on the market.
We just happen to have one of them running the country at the moment. That's what makes it seem worse.
And a lot of people like him. But that's another issue.
But they have those people in Canada too. Definitely.
But they're not in charge.
At the moment, yes. At the moment.
Yes.
But anyway, so that was the trip to Canada. That was we spent I think one more day going to Glacier National Park, and then drove to Kennewick, Washington, where they didn't want to see anything else. And then I arrived home yesterday. So and now we're doing the podcast. But I would say overall, it was a friend for a vacation, with the exception of the utter back pain that I have from
Yeah.
doing nearly 8 hours of driving almost every day. The
That's a sign of what a good dad you are. Like so many parents would take their 3 adult kids out for a vacation and be like, "Oh, it was a fucking nightmare. It fucking bothered the
well,
shit out of me."
the kids were great. They all had a really good time. It helps if you have credit cards. That's a big help too. I actually just gave each of them a credit card and said you can spend up to $200, so they would never bug me about buying something for them.
Right.
So
Now, because you had the adult kids, you didn't have to drive the whole time, did you? I mean,
only one of them drives, and to be
oh,
honest, I don't trust anybody else driving my car if I'm in a circumstance where there's no cell phone service and there's no internet service in many places where you're going, and you have the potential of going into a gully or a canyon with people who've never driven in those environments before.
oh, yeah. See, like the last couple of trips, like we took a trip, and Rourke, who's my youngest son, which means he's 19 now. So I think he was 18 at the time. Oh, I had him drive the shit out of. I was like, "There you go, kid." We even got to the point where we were coming into the park, or were we? Oh, we were up in the Appalachians, up in Virginia,
Okay.
and we're coming into the park, and it's that kind of windy ass road, and of course we timed it all fucked up, so it was dark, and then on top of it being dark, it was foggy,
Yeah.
and he's driving in this. Holly, my wife, and for those who don't know, and my daughter, who was like 8 or 9 at the time, are in the back, and he's just like
White knuckling.
white knuckled.
Been there.
And I'm like, dude, you got this. You so got this. He's like, I cannot see in front of me, Dad. I'm like, it's fine. Oh, wait, stop. And then he's like, oh. And I'm like, I'm just kidding. And he's like, oh.
So you just did it as an opportunity to torture your kid.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty
You
much.
see, I don't want to be in the passenger seat while that's going on. I'm like, I want to have the
Yeah.
control of the vehicle. I don't want to. I'm not going to really trust anybody else in my car. If it was their car, sure, I'll be the passenger. But my car, no, not letting that happen. I will. Any damage is going to happen to the car is going to be because of me. Especially since, again, no internet service, no cell phone service, can't call an insurance company, that type of thing. Oh yeah, I did get one speeding ticket on the way home in the thin portion of Idaho. I was able to go fast enough to warrant getting pulled over.
And then
The
Matt threw a
thing-
rock
the-
at the cop.
No, I-
The
Give him the
thin
ticket.
portion of Idaho is just Aryan Nation racist. That's a terrible part of the country right there.
well, that particular police officer was nice to me. He says,
Oh, that's
because
good.
you're honest with me. He goes,
And you're white.
I've lowered this speeding.
You're you
Yes,
look
the
a good
beard.
Aryan stock.
I'm like, I'm more than just white. My beard is like
Yes, literally.
is
white.
albino.
And
But
he's like, okay, Santa Claus, whatever, head on your way.
well, no, he's like, where are you heading to? I'm like, well, we're heading to Kennewick. He's like, do you know what you're doing? I'm like, yeah, I was trying to get past that logging truck. I said, but apparently I went a little too fast. I guess I was a moron. And he said, can I get your license and registration? I went, yeah, here you go. He goes back to the car. He comes back, and I'm like, yeah, I was just telling the kids how they shouldn't do things like that. He's like, well, since you're honest with me, this could have been worse because you hit our excessive speed limit because you were going 19 miles an hour the speed limit, so I took it down to below 10. I was like, well, thank you very much. And that was the extent of that. So I still got this.
So that made the ticket less money.
Yes, it does, and also takes away reckless driving as well,
Ooh,
where you can
that's
get
good.
you can get a charge. But one of my kids is like, "Oh, it's a good thing he didn't catch you when you go 90 in that 35-mile-an-hour lane." I was like, "Did I do that?" He's like, "Yes, you did." I'm like, "Okay." See, the speed limits in some areas in Idaho are like 80 miles an hour. I enjoy 80-mile-an-hour speed limit roads because that means I can go at least 89. Because the basic rule of thumb for me is you can go within 10 miles an hour over the speed limit without really getting hit by cops. It's
Yeah,
whatever
the
I
speed
push.
limit's just a suggestion, really.
No, a speed limit is
No, it's not a
the law. I used to know somebody who thought the speed limit meant you couldn't go slower than that number.
You go 50 miles an hour or faster.
She was also a person who liked to read books while she was driving, and
Ay.
yeah, but at one point she finally realized that she couldn't understand why so many people were going so much slower than her. And then she realized that speed limit was you couldn't go above that number. So that was very
Wow.
fun.
And then
thing
she realized, how
for her
come
to
so
find
many
out.
people aren't crashed into trees like me because I was reading a book? Why are they still driving?
Exactly.
And she's still alive.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
she
insane.
is. She's like in her 60s now, so she made her way to that.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
And she's well read. She's
Yeah.
probably read a lot of books over the years while driving to and
Lots
fro.
of them. Like asking people, what does this word mean? Who she's sitting next to, instead of like gray poupon. Poupon? What's that word mean anyway? It's the mustard that you poop on. Anyway,
Matt, can I ask you a question as someone who grew
no,
up being a
you
military
cannot
brat?
ask me a question.
Okay, then I will psychically put it in your head.
Okay, let's hear it.
No.
Is that your
As
psychic
someone, as a
noise?
military brat who lived
Yes.
all over the world, you lived in Asia, and do you
I
still
did live.
ever
I
travel?
lived in two different continents, but yeah, I guess it
Yeah,
could
but
be
do you
all over
ever
there
like
for other people.
travel to other countries as an adult? Have you been to Europe? Have you been to?
I've been to Europe, but it was more for business, for like business purposes. It wasn't
Okay.
really for leisure purposes. Although I've been to Canada for leisure purposes,
Well,
um,
that's not another country.
and
That's
I
just us. That's a
can't remember
51st state.
yeah, don't tell the Canadians that. They don't really appreciate that
I
perspective.
know they don't, but come on, let's be
They
honest.
really don't, because I've done that before. I'm like, you guys should just join the United States. They're like, no, thank you, no, thank you, sir.
No, thank you.
They're very polite about it.
They politely decline.
They're like, no, we don't wish to be part of the United States of
I
America.
was just curious to see if, like, it's not as exotic for you to go to another country like it was for me. Just to go to Italy, which isn't that exotic. They just speak a different language and there's slight cultural differences.
Well,
But
last time I went to a foreign country was, I think France. I went to France somewhere back in the late '90s, and I was there for, I think, a couple months, couple of weeks. That was a really fun trip. I really enjoyed that. I remember at one point I had a friend of mine who's French here in the States, and I was talking to him on the phone. I said, I've been here in Paris for a while now, and I haven't really had the food. The food hasn't been that great, man. He's like, what? He's like, what are you saying? I'm like, you hear all how French food's supposed to be this great thing. He's like, you have not gone to a real French restaurant then.
yeah, there's
Like,
no Arby's here.
right. So I went and talked to one of my French colleagues. I said, listen, can you take me to a place that's like representative of French cuisine? He's like, yes, I will help you. So,
Keep doing that accent. I
Yes,
like it.
yes,
I will love you.
I don't know. They don't.
Remember, a
Even the
third of
kids
our
talk like
audience, a third of our audience is France.
And they
So
probably
it's-
love our French
So I was
accents,
taken to one of
or
these
bad French
restaurants where the waiters are there as like this third generation. It's a family thing whenever you work in certain restaurants where get the job because your father died or something. It's not like they
Wow.
own the place; you just happen to work there. So, and it was the first time I ever had foie gras. Was at this one restaurant, and I realized that
Ooh.
oh, I love foie gras, and I didn't know that before that day. And it was an amazing, it was a remarkable restaurant to go to. It was, I don't even remember how much money I spent. I didn't care. It was just really, really good. And then later on, I went to Versailles, and that was part of the leisurely part of that trip. It was business, but the final, I think, 3 days I had to myself and a work colleague. And so we went off to the palace in Versailles, and it was incredible to see this place.
Wow.
And I never was really a fan of wine, so I'm at this little restaurant in Versailles, and I asked them to give me a decent wine. They're like, "Would you like to smell the cork?" I went, "No, because I'm stupid and I don't know what that means." So they just gave me, I think it was.
Are you hitting on me?
What?
Are you hitting on me? Is that some euphemism? Would you like to smell the cork?
Oh, got you. Okay, sorry. I thought you were talking about yourself. But I was thinking you. I don't know what you're talking about, Greg.
Sorry, it wasn't that good a joke.
Yes.
It's not bad that you didn't get it.
I agree with you. I was trying to remember what happened, and I finally had real French wine, and I went, okay, I like this. So real French wine is worth drinking. I haven't really gotten into it here in the States because it doesn't really taste the same as it did there. I don't know, maybe it was the ambiance or where I happen to be, or maybe it just tastes better there because the chemicals aren't in it that required getting.
That's what it is. That's true.
Sent
In
across.
Italy, the wine was way better.
Yeah.
and
So
it's
they do the
real.
same thing in France. And then I was in Germany for a month, and then another time for like 2 weeks, again, business purposes. And I traveled all around the country, and I really enjoyed that. I love the Autobahn. It's the Autobahn, which essentially is what ruined me for American highways, because
So there's no speed limit,
I
right?
learned how to drive, at 120 miles an hour out there, and I got the hang of it. So I know how to slow down without killing people in the car with you.
Oh,
And
that's good.
but there are speed limits on the autobahn. I mean, there has to be,
Okay.
because there's got to be times when people have to slow down. Most of the time, the right lane is all for like trucks going really freaking slow. The left lane is for people who are maniacs, because it's really bizarre that you're going 120 miles an hour and there's someone flashing their lights on you for you to get out of that lane because you're going too slow at 120 miles an hour. And the thing is, the car I was in couldn't go any faster. So I'm like, all right, I guess I got to get out of the lane.
Is
But
that scary when you're driving 120 miles an hour? Like just
it's
holding the
it's
wheel?
it's
Is it like
scary. No, it's not so bad, really. I mean, I was doing
no?
100 on this trip a few times, but and don't tell anybody. But what's the scary part is when people are stopped and you think you have a certain amount of distance when you start braking, and you really, really don't. And that's when you think you're going to die, is the first few times that you misjudge the distance between you and the car in front of you when you're going that fast. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
then the
I used to drive to Miami from Tampa, where I live, pretty frequently. And I was going through my midlife crisis, so I had a sports car at the time,
oh
and
no,
I'd do 120, 130 miles an hour. The thing about driving that fast in America is you're just like vroom, 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 because no one is driving that fast. So that was the weird part, was just trying to weave in and out of the traffic and keep that pace.
yes, and the thing is that you could have some minor thing on the road that can cause a bigger problem.
Yeah.
If you're having to dodge something, but for the most part, you can see. I tend not to go that crazy if I can't see too far ahead of me. It's like if I have good long straightaways, I'm gold.
Yeah.
But if there's areas where I can't see because there's like a dip in the road, I'll slow down a little bit just to make sure nothing bad happens, especially if I'm trying to pass four cars at once.
Yeah, no.
Y'all,
From here to Miami, it's Florida. It's just flat straightaways.
Yeah.
y'all, my relatives in Italy drove like they were at fucking Le Mans, and they were all so good at it. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember one cousin totally speeding like fuck, like everyone, and it was a turn. There's a curve in the road, and the guy in front of him was going too slow on a 2-lane highway or road,
Yeah.
and he just said, I'm going to pass on a curve. And any car could have been there in the other lane coming our way. We didn't know. Like,
That
it's
that happened in the
dangerous.
Philippines a lot because they
Yeah,
have these small mountains, and buses, they would pass around the curves on mountains all the frickin' time and scare
it's
the crap
nuts.
out of you
Yeah,
because of that
you
simple.
don't
But
know.
but they get really good at putting on the brakes and let the guy next to him go past, and then they get behind him. So
I
you
guess.
get a facility of how to save yourself from death for the most part. But then you have really horrific crashes that happen too because they didn't actually do it as well as they thought they could.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have
It's
that combination. I just
human
know that
error.
I had three kids in terror at a few times during this trip, and I consider that more of the friend part than the foe part of the trip, um, because there's nothing
Because you
better
like to
than
terrorize your
freaking out
children.
your adult children, as Brendan will attest to what he did to his son in the fog.
Oh,
And I have a
absolutely.
lot of reality with that because when I was in Germany, there were times I was on the Autobahn and there was serious fog. And if you're going like over 100 miles an hour and suddenly a fog hits, you see nothing. And then you freak out completely. You think you're really going to die because anybody could be stopped ahead of you and you have no time to stop. You might see
So
the
heaven
lights.
forbid you should slow down under 100 miles
Oh no,
per
you
hour.
definitely slow down whenever you hit the fog, and then you come out of the fog.
Good.
You're like, oh, everything's okay again. But I mean, I was one night I was driving from Eastern Germany to Western Germany, and the fog was so thick I could see maybe 15 feet ahead of me. Now that might be even an exaggeration, and I'm like, there's like holding on to it, going. My head's over the steering wheel going, I'm going to die. Someone's going to hit me in the dark because they can't see me either. And this is it. I'll be dead in somewhere in some backwater area of Germany. But anyway, it turned out to be totally fine, even though I was like 60 miles out of the way I was supposed to be going because I got turned around in the dark and in the fog. But anyway,
Right. what we have in Florida that's somewhat comparable is starting almost right about now is the 3 to 6 o'clock complete jungle downpour rain.
Yes.
And so you're driving, and you might as well, somebody might as well just be pouring a bucket of water constantly on your front windshield. You can't see shit.
It's like a car wash.
Yeah, it's like driving through a car wash at 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, it was like that in the Philippines too. We had 2 seasons, wet and dry.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's right.
The like somebody just pouring a bucket of water over your head, for that matter.
Yeah.
Like how be out for a couple of seconds and you'd be drenched.
Yeah.
But and also I think it was similar insects in Philippines as in Florida, because we had the giant cockroaches there too, as they have in Florida. Although they call them palmetto bugs in Florida, but I always call them cockroaches, big flying bastards.
That's what they should be called. The palmetto bug thing is just some, I don't know, pansy ass. Let's PR these fuckers. No.
You know, ecologists talk about how every part of the food chain and every part of nature is crucial, even if they're not nice or you don't like them. But if I was God and I could just eliminate all cockroaches, I would roll the dice and be like, yep, this could totally upset the ecosphere. And maybe 50 species would die because they couldn't eat the cockroaches. I would take the chance. That's how much I hate cockroaches.
You know, there are plenty of other friggin' insects that are horrible, though.
No, cockroaches are the worst. I have a primal fear of them and hatred.
I would 100% take out mosquitoes.
Yes, they're useless.
They're fucking useless. They spread diseases. They kill hundreds of thousands of people every year. Fuck mosquitoes.
Well, maybe that's the point, though. Maybe the point of having mosquitoes is to like thin the human herd. You know, maybe that is
possibly.
The whole point. Yeah,
that's pretty.
So
dark.
if like it was up to us, we would get rid of these things. But then if there's this god individual who would go, no, some of you guys got to go. So that's why those things are happening. Or it gives us the incentive to create something to fix that particular problem. If we're going to go with an anthropomorphic god.
I want a final solution for roaches and mosquitoes.
I think it's called raid, isn't it?
It's not final. It's hard to get them all. I want to figure something out.
I've stepped on them and they've survived.
Roaches are tough.
We just bought some sort of device. I haven't really looked at it. It just literally arrived from Amazon yesterday. It's some sort of mosquito repellent device. It's not like your bug zapper, and it's not those stupid candles. It's something else that's supposed to be like, Elon Musk level of the next generation of mosquito killing.
I think they've actually taken Elon's Musk and turned that into a citronella candle.
Could work.
Possibly.
To keep away MAGA hats.
Maybe. Anyway,
that's another pest.
I had a whole theme I was going to go with, but I blew it.
So do you guys think, how do we, friend or foe, most vacations?
I think some people, I think if you're taking family or someone you love with you, you have the very real possibility of it being a faux vacation.
Yes.
Because of the fact that somebody invariably ruins it for you in some way. Well, not invariably, but often can ruin it for you. I was fortunate this last vacation. I really enjoyed it. Had a good time with all the kids. They all loved every part of it, it seemed. We did a lot of really fun things. In terms of just driving around and checking things out and just spending time together. We were in the foothills of Montana with no cell service and no internet, so we wound up playing. One of my kids and I wound up playing Chutes and Ladders, because that was the one game that was in the cabin we were staying in. Freaking Chutes and Ladders, and there was 3 DVDs there. One was a copy of Casablanca. The other one was also a copy of Casablanca. And the third one was a disc cleaner for an Xbox. So that was.
Did you watch that? Were you that bored? You put it in?
The disc cleaner?
Give it a try, yeah.
No, but I was like, you know what? Casablanca is considered one of the best movies of all time.
It's a great movie.
Let's watch Casablanca. So we watched Casablanca together, and everybody enjoyed that as well. So yeah, we had a good time. But I'd seen it before. But yeah, that was life in the cabin. But it was a really nice cabin we were in, and I got to say.
I thought you were going to say the one movie was like Adam Sandler. like some shit
I
movie.
would have watched that too, man.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because we had no internet access. It sucked. We were supposed to have Wi-Fi in the place, and the Wi-Fi
Yeah.
was down, and so
Oh
there was
no.
no cable, and there was basically just us talking to each other. And we just spent hours in a car together, as well as 4 days before at a
Yeah.
resort in Wyoming, where we were up close and personal with each other, and yeah, so but it all kind of worked out. It all kind of worked out. It was a good vacation, and I think I prefer taking adult kids on vacation than little kids on vacation because little kids don't remember shit, and they're annoying,
Yeah.
and they complain about things, and they have a lot of needs and desires that you don't want to meet them, but you do because you're a parent. And I realized that taking them as an adult, plus, in this time of COVID, it was easier for me to take a more lengthy vacation too. Because normally I take like 3 days. As a matter of fact, I'm taking another vacation on Sunday with my wife. We're going to Crater Lake for a couple of days. So it's like I'm getting like two vacations in a row because she couldn't go on the trip that we took to.
Oh, your wife didn't go on the trip with you? It was just you
No,
and the kids?
just three of the kids. Two of the kids didn't go.
Oh,
The other ones at work. The ones at work didn't go.
Yeah, when I was a
well,
kid, two of my best friends, their parents were globetrotters. Every summer, they'd be in Germany or Italy or just in Europe.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I look back and that's so wasted on a kid because I remember just going to this little island called Block Island. We didn't have a TV. And even though it was this beautiful island off of Rhode Island with like bluffs and ocean and really unspoiled, it's very like just beautiful nature there. All I could think about was like, I'm missing Happy Days this week. And oh, I'm so pissed I can't watch fucking Laverne and Shirley tonight. And like
I do have some fond memories of vacations when I was a kid.
no, it did force me to actually be like, no, this is kind of cool. I do like this, going to the
Yeah.
barbershop quartet concert. Weird old timey things I never would have
Sure.
done. But for the most part, I wasn't as receptive because this is how bad we were. There was on our radio dial. One of the radio stations somehow could pick up TV transmissions, the audio. We would listen to Happy Days and all their shitty shows. That's how fucking idiotic we were. Instead of like, hey, we're on this beautiful island, let's go out to the bluffs, and watch the sunset. We were like, no, we're going to sit in our room and listen to the audio of Happy Days.
Well,
I
it's a
mean,
vacation. It's your choice. You can really do whatever you want.
I know, but can you imagine if my parents took me to Italy? They'd be like, hey, tonight we're going to the best museum in Florence. I'd be like, no, I want to listen to
Our
look at my
first
iPhone.
our first day after arriving in the resort in Wyoming, I was just exhausted and beaten up, and my back was killing me, and I basically stayed in all day. But then one of the other kids decided to just kind of hang out in the hotel room all day too. He went out for like maybe 10 minutes at one point, whereas the other two kids went out horseback riding and like checking out the resort and stuff. And this guy just does 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Like, but after that, he definitely got more into the spirit of things and started really enjoying it as well. So, maybe you need that first couple of days to decompress and go, okay, now I can enjoy what's going on out here. And I think that could be what
Because they're
happened.
adult children. That's what I'm
Right.
saying.
Yeah, but
If
some
they
of
were
them,
little kids, they would just been whining the whole time and like,
yeah, but some of them haven't had necessarily the opportunity to do this kind of thing before. So, because we didn't do a lot of this growing up, so it's something to get used to. I think it's like, how do you get out of your patterns? You know.
yeah. I
Anyway,
never
so
have.
you haven't got out of your pattern. I've been thinking that I need to take you out sometime, just you and me, do some weird, stupid vacation together for a few days, just because you never get out of your apartment.
I
And
know
I
I've never been to a national
seriously,
park.
I seriously think we should plan some sort of camping trip, all three of us.
yeah,
But we'll do
well,
our
as
podcast
long
from there.
as there's a hotel nearby, I'm totally on
No,
board.
a Cessna plane will drop us all off in
No,
Alaska.
I'm not going full Cessna plane, but no hotel. We got to pitch a tent. We can
Fuck
have a
that.
little. We can have a little primitive drive.
I
You know,
can't.
like,
I can't sleep on the ground, man. That just ain't happening.
no,
10 years ago I did that, and I vowed never again.
you need
Like,
an air mattress.
I don't need it either. I can just stay at a
If we went
hotel.
camping, Matt would be dead in 45 minutes. Somehow we'd just die. He'd be like, I can't
I don't
deal
know.
with
I'm
this.
too fat to hike, so That's definitely something else. I did hike to the summit of a mountain while I was in Wyoming, though. Of course, it helped that the chairlift took me up most of the way. But but
So
then
that's not
after I got
hiking,
off the
really.
chairlift, I got up to the summit of Fred's Mountain.
So you walked 50 feet to the summit.
If it was that long, might have been 50, might have been
So that's a
less.
hike. That's a little hike.
It was. It was enough of a hike that I appreciated the walking stick I was given a couple of years ago from one of my karaoke people. I definitely used it because I'm a large man and walking down slate rocks is tricky when you're a
Yeah.
large man. Anyway, but it was like a really beautiful view too. Got to see the other side of the Grand Tetons from that particular view, as
I would
well
just say
as
you were big
Idaho
boned.
splayed out all around me. Excuse me?
Oh, I was just
I'm
gonna say I would say you were big boned.
I would not. I would say I'm morbidly obese.
You're
That's what I would
husky.
say.
No, you're husky.
I do not blame my bones for anything. I blame it all on bad discipline and a love of eating stuff I shouldn't
Is
eat.
that a dead word, husky? Remember when we were kids? That was the euphemism for if you were chubby. Oh, he's husky.
I
I
think
haven't
it's
heard
still
that.
used. It's just not used
It
as
is?
often. I think
Okay.
it's just very, very infrequently used.
Because
But
I was always
I think you're
husky.
right, though.
I was a
I
husky
think it's
boy.
dying. Anyway, so I think overall, I think we've done Vacation Friend or Foe kind of sort of a justice, maybe a little bit. However, we should know how much is in the pizza fund. So
Pizza fun.
right now we're at $2.61.
Is that like what? We made 8 cents in 2 weeks?
No, I think we made 20 since last week.
Okay,
in
that's
2 weeks.
impressive.
So
Ooh,
like
20
10
cents.
cents a week. That's my. I get. If you listen to the last episode, it tells you
How many francs did we get?
how many francs. Well, let me see. I will check and see how many people have been listening to us from what countries. So right now we're no longer at 25%. We're at 21% of people from France.
They turned off after our
And
accents.
75% of people in the United States. 1% from Ireland.
What?
Yes.
We have to do Irish accents now.
1% from and then minus less than 1% from Canada, Ukraine, and Nigeria. So
I wonder if that's one of Brendan's relatives in Ireland.
I don't know.
Could be.
Our
distant
statistics,
cousin.
our demographics are 58% of our listeners are between the ages of 45 and 59. So it's basically the three of us.
Yeah.
And then
that
10% are 35 to 44. Here's an odd figure: 5% ages 23 to 27. Why?
It would be weird if like 5% was like 8 to 14.
That would be very wrong.
That'd be very odd.
And then
I would have
12%
to
is
stop doing the
60
show, I think,
plus.
at that point.
The tween demographic.
We don't want that one. We
We
don't
have
want
Brendan,
that
how can
demographic.
we skew our demographics younger? That's what I'm looking for. I want a younger, hip.
We would. Well, you know,
crowd.
my oldest son, my oldest natural son, has an interest in participating in the podcast because he thinks he could add something to it, and he might be able to give us a younger perspective. So I'll just toss the idea out if you guys want to give him a shot one of these days.
Is
Because
he just going to talk about kombucha and shit?
he would not, but who knows what he would talk about? I have no idea what it would be. But he has
How old is he again?
he is turning 24 next week.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We got to
And
do that.
he's actually enjoyed hearing the podcast too. Apparently, one thing our podcast does for people is want them to argue with us. That's some of the
Perfect.
feedback that I've gotten. People are like, "Well, no, I wanted to say this to blah blah." I'm like, "Okay, well that's appropriate given the nature of this podcast."
Do you guys know I do that when I listen to the podcast the next day? I think of all the things I should have said to argue better. I want to argue more with you guys. I'm like,
I get
I should have said
upset with
that.
myself. I get upset with myself when I do the editing because I'm like, I say the word "like" far too frequently. That's
you mean
one
like a
thing that-
valley girl? Like.
I just say it a lot, and it bothers me that I say it as much as I do, and I say, you know what, or no, it's
You know what I mean?
yeah, I think that one
Vern.
That's an
overdone.
that's
You
an
just-
LA thing.
Yeah.
You just say cowabunga a lot too. That's
Oh
kind of
yes,
annoying.
that's
kind of overplayed.
Every other word, cowabunga
Mhm.
and
Bazinga.
bazinga. Right. That's from a show I've never even
Boo-
watched.
Booyah!
Even better, or Baba Booey, if we want to go back further.
I love Baba Booey.
Wubba
All right.
double whatever.
So, let's get a kind of a clue of what we want to talk about for our next podcast. I think this is a decent one. I babbled through most of it, but anybody got some decent ideas on what they could do for the next podcast? I've been doing a fasting thing. We could talk about stupid fad diets and stuff. Or
I've done fasts. I could talk about that with you.
I don't know how Brendan is on that particular regard. Do we want
I
to go there?
have. I've got nothing but the observations of somebody who thinks that that might be an idea to do, but hasn't done it.
I
I
think
did.
that's the perfect perspective then.
I did something where I ate a lot of protein and vegetables, and then
That's
once a
called
week.
lunch.
No, and then once a week I got to like splurge and eat whatever the fuck I wanted.
Uh-huh.
That's been the only diet I've really done. My son's doing a keto thing, which I'm
Uh-huh.
not really sure what the fuck that means, but I know it means he doesn't want any kind of rice or potatoes or any starches. So I cook a lot of veggies and meat.
Okay. All
That's
right.
what all the diets are. Every diet is no carbs. They
My
give them
question-
different names every 4 years, but every diet is basically the Scarsdale diet
Right.
from the 80s.
My question is, do we really need these diets, or should we just not be simple and count the number of calories that we eat and work out what number of calories we should eat based upon our body type, and then just eat only those calories?
Well, I think that we could certainly make this the topic for next week then, because you've already kind of gotten an ideology in place of how you
I
think
actually
it
did
should-
that
it should
diet.
be.
And it worked very well.
Which diet?
I did 1,000 calories a day for like 6 months. And
Yeah.
I ate whatever the fuck I wanted. One day I would starve myself and have a Snickers bar.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I get to eat a Snickers bar because I had one little thing for lunch.
Yeah.
And it totally works.
Did you
Yeah,
like rub it
that's-
all over you? What did you do with the Snickers bar?
Oh my God. I made love to that Snickers. You don't know. When you're eating 1,000 calories a day, even like a fucking lifesaver candy is like orgasmic. You're like, oh, butterscotch lifesaver, 10 calories.
1,000 calories a day is nothing.
It's small, but it's not starvation. It wasn't like I was like gnawed with hunger. I had like three little meals a day, like a little sandwich with some ham on it, whatever.
Okay.
And then a lean
Well-
cuisine for dinner.
Anybody have anything pithy they want to end the show on?
Either these walls go or I go.
This has been the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker Computer Telecast, where any advice has been designed purely for amusement and deep-sea diving. Please take a candy on your way out, pet the lion tamer, and subscribe to this computer telecast if you know it's good for you. The law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker deny all culpability in today's events and are not to be confused with real law offices that have a secretary and books and stuff. Thank you all. Have a good day.